So I got this comment on YouTube. It says, "Morning, Cal. I've always been curious about the Bayesian economy. The first time I went to Barbados in 2006, their exchange rate was 2 to 1. Over a decade later, I went there and it's still 2 to 1. What are they doing that we aren't?" Great question. I'm Kalila Reynolds, financial journalist and educator based in Jamaica. Let me explain, and let me also say I'm based in Jamaica, but I'm originally from Belize, and Belize's exchange rate is also pegged 2 to 1 to the US dollar and has been for several decades. So let me explain how this works. There are two different ways that currencies typically work in terms of the exchange rate. You have those currencies that are pegged to the US dollar, meaning that it can't move unless and until the government and the central bank decide that they're going to allow it to move, which would mean that it would either change, they could change the peg. So for example, the Belize dollar used to be pegged 1 to 1 to the United States dollar. And then at some point, I think it was in the 50s, the currency devalued and they moved it to 2 to 1. And it has remained at 2 to 1 ever since. Now, countries like Jamaica do not have a peg, we have a floating exchange rate, which means that the price of the Jamaican dollar, the price of the US dollar versus Jamaican dollars changes from day to day depending on market demand, supply and demand. If supply is high and demand is low, then you can get US dollars for cheap. You will need less Jamaican dollars to buy one US dollar. But if demand is high and supply is low, the price is going to go up and you are going to need more Jamaican dollars to buy one US dollar. So how is it that Barbados has this pegged system, and is that something that Jamaica should do? Well, how Barbados and Belize are able to maintain their pegs to the US dollar are in two ways. One, their economy has to be able to support it somehow. And two, they exercise tight currency controls. And I know in the case of Belize, and I have experience there because I'm from there, that currency control part is real. So you cannot just walk into a bank and say you need X amount of US dollars like right now. That's not going to happen. It is very, very difficult in Belize to get US dollars, especially for the average consumer. Like if I'm in Belize and I'm traveling, like you have to order in advance. You have to call the bank ahead, especially if you know somebody at the bank. You have to tell them that, you're traveling next month and put aside some US dollars for you, even for small amounts, like 500 US dollars. It is not that easy to just go into a bank. Not many cambios actually exist the way like here in Jamaica, you have cambios all over the place. You can just walk into a cambio and easily exchange your JMD for USD and vice versa. It does not work that way in Belize. Even if you want to send remittances, so if you are in Belize and you need to send money to somebody in the United States or in Jamaica, you have to get there very, very early in order to be able to buy US dollars to send abroad to somebody if you want, even if it's for trade. If you're like buying something and you're paying them through MoneyGram or Western Union, you have to line up very, very early in the morning to be able to access those US dollars. So that is one way that countries that have a peg are able to maintain that peg. They exercise very, very, very tight currency controls. Now, the other way that they're able to maintain the peg, of course, is by having their economies actually support this currency peg. They have to be able to earn enough US dollars to validate that peg being there at 2 to 1 for both Belize and for Barbados. There's something else that maybe I should mention, maybe I shouldn't, but there is also the underground economy that partially could help these countries maintain, hypothetically speaking, because I don't know for sure, right? But a lot of people, because it is so difficult, at least in Belize, to get US dollars, you know somebody who have US dollars. And basically ask around, you have US, when you get US, put it up for me. And sometimes the sources of these US dollars, you're not really asking any questions, you're not doing due diligence like the bank. You just know you need it and you get it somehow. Somebody hook you up and you get it. So there could be some illicit sources holding up. And I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm saying it could be. right? Some illicit sources that contribute to, the situation, all right? So let me know in the comments if this makes sense. Which system would you prefer? Would you prefer having a pegged system where the dollar is stable and you know exactly what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be really, really hard for you to get, especially if you need to do regular trade? Or would you prefer having a floating exchange rate like Jamaica, where the currency may be somewhat unpredictable at times? Lately, it's been fairly stable, but it could be unpredictable. The value is going to change from day to day depending on market circumstances, but at least you can get it. It's readily available when you want it. Which situation would you prefer? Check the link in my bio to subscribe to my newsletter and get money news like this straight to your inbox. KalilaReynolds.com/newsletter. Let's get this money.